Senator Moreno.
Mr. Chairman, as I mentioned to you yesterday, I really appreciate putting on this hearing. I think it's really, really important. I think if the American people read everything that was provided for this hearing, their minds would be blown. I think some of the stuff that's in here is sensitive information. We should maybe think about maybe daylighting that, because I've never read something more outrageous than reading that memo. So it's pretty crazy. So you mentioned just now to my colleague from Michigan that the oversight is essential. How did oversight work out in the last 4 years of the Biden administration?
It didn't really work out.
Okay, gotcha. So it's not a question. So it's not a question of oversight. It's a question of intent. Because here's the reality. I think Americans would be appalled to know that their government was spying on them, not just spying on them, paying people like Mr. Crowder, who you didn't take the job to go walk around airports monitoring bathroom habits and coffee habits of American citizens, and yet your government was paying you to do that, to spy on American citizens, violating the Fourth Amendment, shredding the Fourth Amendment.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so yes, I'm finally on somebody other than Kash Patel. That is right. We're talking about the reauthorization of CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency, or whatever the hell it's called. Basically, the people that are in charge of spying on you. This was authorized after 9/11 to catch terrorists, but it has been used ever since to spy on us. It's fascinating. We're going to talk about this. We got a committee hearing going because they're about to reauthorize this thing. It's coming up on the continuing resolution. So we're going to see if Democrats and Republicans choose to engage in more spying on Americans. So you guys do me a favor, smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. And click the join button, sign up, become a member, do all that goobly gobbly stuff, because you need to, you want to, it helps the channel for sure, and I need a lot of help, folks. But without any further ado, here we go, y'all.
You know, one of the things that I had to do to become a U.S. citizen was learn a lot about American history. I had to read the Constitution. My mom convinced me that the citizenship test was going to be impossible, so I memorized it. And everybody talks about what Joe Biden says is the thing. You know the thing, life, liberty, is he couldn't even repeat it, so he called it the thing. But after the end of that sentence, there's a line that says, the government is deriving its just powers from the consent of the governed. Deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. Mr. Taibbi, do you think that over the last 4 years of the Biden administration that they derived their just powers from the consent of the governed? Do you think Americans knew that they had somebody stalking them at airports and bathrooms and coffee shops and watching who they were talking to on airplanes?
Senator Moreno, thank you for the question. No, I don't think so. In fact, as a reporter in the last 4 years, it's been very frustrating investigating not just programs like Quiet Skies, but also issues like censorship. It seems like there are only 3 ways that you can get important information. One is through whistleblowers, like the ones represented by Mr. Levitt. Another is through investigations like the ones by this committee, and the third is if an eccentric billionaire decides to hand over a ton of material to a reporter. It's become almost impossible to get information about these abuses, and I think what I was trying to get at with my opening statement is that particularly in the last 4 years, the government has taken the position that the citizenry, they're all basically suspect until proven innocent, and it should be the other way around.
Well, that should be the other way around. That's the foundational principles of this country. That isn't up for debate. There is no law that we need to pass. That's in our Constitution, in our Bill of Rights. And Mr. Crowder, I'm going to shift to you for a second. I was out of the meeting. I had to go to a banking session, so I apologize. Could you point out your wife real quick for me? Raise your hand. Has anybody from the U.S. government apologized to your wife? So they haven't even bothered. Nobody in the government has bothered to pick up the phone, send a letter saying, we are very sorry.
Nobody.
Well, let me say that to you on behalf of the United States government. Apologize for what happened to you. It should never happen to any American citizen. It's a total and complete disgrace that the previous administration weaponized this. You mentioned, Mr. Crowder, this is a result of 9/11. How many American citizens were involved in applauding at 9/11?
0 to my knowledge.
So what problem are we trying to solve? Meaning, if the auspices of this, where look what happened, we can never let another 9/11 happen, why the hell are we having Americans surveyed at airports and on airplanes? And Mr. Taibbi, you mentioned something else. During the COVID era, let's not forget how insane that was. Do you remember what that was like? Like you get on an airplane, you had the mask on. We saw people dragged off airplanes because they weren't wearing a mask, dragged, like humiliated by the police, dragged off for the offense of not having a mask on. But when they served you, you could take your mask off to eat because it was the most polite virus ever in the history of humanity. They said, well, you're eating, so I'm not going to infect anybody right now. But when you're done, I'm going to go back to the infectious part. Those of us who had some level of like, hey, this is just stupid, said, we're not going to wear a mask. And that put you on a no-fly list. That got you banned from flying. Could you explain that?
Actually, Senator, it's worse than that. My understanding is that just for supporting a group that protested the wearing of masks on airplanes, you could be placed on a no-fly list or on a watch list by the TSA. That's in addition to the J6 category, which included people who were just suspected of traveling to the national capital region, not even of going into the capital.
You know, I don't mind overtime. Let me just make this comment. Mr. Chairman, you mentioned this to our ranking member who's not here to listen to this, but maybe he wouldn't want to. He has a choice, right, to extend CISA 2015 by voting yes for this continuing resolution today. But it's so important to him to hijack Republicans that even he's willing to say, well, this is not that actually important to me. I also find it decently ironic that when they had control of the House, the Senate, and the White House, that the report that he issued, he could have put that on the floor, right? I'm not wrong there, right? He could have put that on the floor and passed that.
Well, it's a good point because this is in response to my wanting to put First Amendment protections on the CISA extension. CISA was the agency. This isn't the authorization for the whole agency, but for some of their powers. And I've said, yes, we can let it go through, but let's add First Amendment protections to it. Why? Because the First Amendment protections were another department of government, some through CISA, DHS, some through the FBI, that Mr. Taibbi knows a lot about because they were meeting with Twitter. And a lot of Americans still don't even know this, that the FBI was actually sitting in meetings with Twitter officials, that CISA was sitting in meetings. And so what I've said, if we're going to reauthorize CISA, which a lot of people want to reauthorize this particular authority, let's reauthorize it with an amendment that simply says government officials are not allowed to meet with them to take down constitutionally protected speech. If it's illegal, they can meet with them and warn them something illegal is happening on their social media. But things that are not illegal, that are protected by speech, why not put it on a must-pass piece of legislation? That's the only way we're ever going to get it beyond the other side is to do it. So you're right, it's fake outrage. They're outraged about this particular authority expiring, but they have every chance. They'll have another chance today to vote to reauthorize it, and it'll be part of the continuing resolution to reauthorize this particular facility.
But just super quickly, I apologize. Last year, when you weren't chairman, the ranking member could have put that bill on the floor and chose not to. Is that correct?
Yes. Senator Langford.
So if you were listening very closely to the end of that right there, you have every right to believe that members of Congress are functionally retarded. As a matter of fact, they don't care about anything. If they can use a wedge issue or the reauthorization of CISA, for crying out loud, as a political bludgeon to bludgeon the other side over the head. Now, both sides do this. I'm not going to say it's just Democrats, but both sides do this. So once again, folks, these people, their interests are not you. Their interests are politics. That comes first. Now, if you want to get back to what he was talking about with the apology, now, if my memory serves me correct, from listening to the opening statements, this guy's wife was targeted because she went to January 6th. She was targeted. She didn't even go in the building. There's cell phone data. There was exculpatory evidence that exonerated her, but that did not stop the FBI from raiding her home, arresting her, throwing her in prison, and putting her through this entire, years-long process, as a matter of fact, putting this lady through the ringer because she went to January 6th. She was put on no-fly lists. She was followed around by U.S. Marshals because she was on the Quiet Skies list, for crying out loud, the same list that they put Tulsi Gabbard on. Tulsi Gabbard, of all people, a former congressman. These people, they don't care who you are, folks. They don't care. These people will spy on you. They will dig into your personal life. The Fourth Amendment be damned. The Fifth Amendment be damned. They don't care, folks. They do not care whatsoever. This is why. Like, I personally, like CISA, okay, a lot of people don't like CISA, okay? I get it. The Cyber Security Infrastructure Agency or whatever. A lot of people don't like it, but it does serve a legitimate function, a necessary function, as a matter of fact, for this country, keeping our cyberspace infrastructure safe from online threats, right? They can't catch everything, of course, but they do their job. But they use this, right, under the auspices of, we're keeping you safe. They use it to spy on you, folks. They absolutely use it to spy on you. This was also used under the Biden administration to go into social media. As a matter of fact, I always talk about the backdoor access, right? But as Matt Taibbi said right there, they didn't have just backdoor access. FBI, CIA, all these agencies actually sat in-person meetings with a lot of, like, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, right? Parler, all of them. All of these social media platforms, pretty much, all the big ones. So I know I said Parler, but that doesn't even exist anymore. But anyway, they would sit in and choose, pick people who they could go ahead and take down. Hey, let's go ahead and ban this person because we don't like their speech. That happened all over the place, folks, and it was pervasive, and thousands upon thousands upon thousands of Americans were silenced from social media because of the Biden administration, folks, and nobody is being held accountable for this. Like, there's a lot of these people that they still work for the FBI, as a matter of fact. They still work for the CIA. We don't get to know those people's names. And for once again, it's like, what do we do about this? How do we get accountability for this? Well, to find out who these people are is not all that easy, folks. But Donald Trump has been firing a lot of people. And, the Democrats, they're trying to use that as a political bludgeon, as we saw with our previous committee hearings where they're going after Kash Patel for firing qualified individuals. Yeah, Donald Trump is obliterating the deep state. Absolutely obliterating the deep state, trying to get rid of as many of these people as possible. And he's doing a pretty good job, folks. Now, this whole cybersecurity nonsense, it's a good agency, but once again, like I said, they use that to go into your personal background. And don't think, folks, that Trump's first term was free from this type of activity. Oh, no, folks. The deep state was still very much in charge of the federal government back then. Donald Trump, he didn't know anybody in politics, so he surrounded himself with way too many rhinos and hired way too many bad folks. And, like I said, right now what he's doing with the U.S. government is very, very good, getting rid of a lot of these people, having Kash Patel run the FBI so he can run off these deep state apparatchiks and get them out of there, folks. We need to get these people out of there. People that only serve their own interests or interests of whatever they may feel aligns with whatever whatever ideology that they serve. And it is serving an ideology for these people. And it's not Democrat or Republican or anything like that. It's just big daddy government ideology, I guess you could say, that, the government is in charge. Go ahead and sit down and shut up. And just don't pay attention to what we're doing type of thing. Kind of gives you, comes off with that kind of scent, if you will, that you don't know anything, you're too dumb to know anything, and that you should just shut your mouth and sit down and let us handle government things. Yeah, I don't really like that at all. I don't like these people's attitudes, none of that stuff. These people need to be fired. I wish there was some sort of censor that we could go around to every single government employee and run that censor across them to figure out if they're serving their own interests or if they're serving the country, because there's a big difference, right? There's a very, very big difference. People that are actually genuinely wanting to serve the country, wanting to get into their positions and do right by the American people instead of serving their own interests or serving the interests of the government itself, because that is not what they are there for, folks. As people, you might think, well, hey, they're working for the government. Shouldn't they serve the interests of the government? No, they're supposed to serve your interests. As a matter of fact, this is why they take an oath to the Constitution, because that document right there legitimizes everything that they do. As a matter of fact, like he said, the power of the government derives from the consent of the governed, for goodness sakes. The framers were geniuses, y'all. They really were. They thought this thing out like really well. And, you know, my hat's off to these people for coming up with a lot of the ideas that they came up with, because they were very novel ideas back then. It's run-of-the-mill stuff these days for our country. You know, Fifth Amendment rights, First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights. Those things didn't exist, folks, back then. You did not have any sort of freedom of speech. As a matter of fact, freedom of speech is a general, like, it's a kind of a new thing, right? Like, even in the country's founding, we had blasphemy laws. You could not speak out against God. You know, sometimes I wish we could get some of those back, if you will. You know, maybe people would be a lot more religious, which is a good thing. You know, the country is getting away from God, and I think we need to get back to God, because, folks, Jesus is always the answer. The answer to everything is Jesus. You got to come to Jesus, put your faith in God, and let God handle the rest. That's what I say, at least. But I think I've rambled on for long enough. This is disgusting. Like, what they've done with CISA is disgusting, right? It's supposed to be something that helps us, that keeps us free from these foreign threats, online at least. And it's been used to actually silence us. That's what has happened here. And that's a major injustice, y'all. But like I said, I've rambled on for long enough. Y'all don't forget to smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. And click the join button. Sign up and become a member. That's the best way to help this channel expand and grow. But you guys, y'all remember that God is always with us. And he loves each and every one of you out there. So y'all try to have a good day and stay legitical. Peace.